What's up? Happy Monday. That feels so long. I've watched that so many times now, but I try to offset the ads on Twitch because they're
Oh, that's smart.
ridiculous. Yeah, so now I'm gonna make it 7 minutes and then people will finally like be through all of them, I figured. Well, anyway, it is Monday. Happy Monday. It is the Tech Commute. I am Jason. Obviously, you all know me. I am fine. We finally made it.
Yeah.
Focus Otter himself, Michael Liendo. Did I say it right?
Hey, perfect, perfect. It's a Spanish name. Yeah, yeah.
Hey, look at that. Let's go. Yeah, look at that. You is it early? 2:59. Wow, we actually started before 3 o'clock today. Holy crap. That is fantastic. Michael, why don't you give us a brief introduction?
Let's do it. Let's do it. What up, Roxy? I see you're in the chat. Already chiming in there. Hey, everybody. My name is Michael Liendo. I'm a senior developer advocate, currently at Orcus, formerly AWS, and a couple other places that we can get into. But that's me, content creator. I am a mid-funnel developer advocate, and we'll definitely be tying into my thoughts on developer advocacy and what that means. But husband, father, all those good things. Dog owner. I got a couple fish. And just general builder and creator.
I love that you are so inclusive that you also called out the fish. Well,
Yeah.
what's up, fish? What up,
Well,
fish?
no, you have to get like like I finally like I'm bougie now. Okay, I got my
Okay.
tech money. I'm doing all right these days. I got a koi pond,
Whoa.
and you have to get like a rock that protects them from like hawks and raccoons and all
Oh
that stuff.
yeah.
But so I had like 3 koi fish down to 2 because like if the fish isn't smart enough to get underneath the rock when the bird comes,
Yeah.
then 3 goes to 2 real quick.
So what's the name of the one we lost?
It was what was it, Kieran? I think it was Kieran.
R.I.P. Kieran.
Yeah. Shout out to Naruto
Yeah,
fans.
shout out. Well, I've seen nets. You got to get a net.
Yeah, but
That
see, going back to the bougie life,
yeah,
I like the net, but then the net doesn't make it look so nice.
that's
I'm a man
true.
of aesthetic.
That okay. I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that. Okay, so you've got the tech money now. You're getting the koi ponds now, but it
Yeah.
wasn't always like that. So maybe let's rewind a little bit. Let's go
Yeah.
back to the early days of Michael and maybe when you first started kind of getting into tech. Like what was that first Hello World experience for you?
Yeah, definitely. So, for those of you that know me by my alias, some of you know this story, at least bits and pieces. But former model, I was a model for 8 years.
That explains a lot.
Freshly dropped out of college,
Yeah.
and I needed something to make some money, so I was bartending and waiting tables. But at the time, my primary occupation was male modeling, so magazines, none of that, OnlyFans stuff. um so you take that, and I just had my daughter at the time, right? And my agent told me, what if something happens to the moneymaker? So I was riding my bicycle without a helmet, racing through traffic, because in your 20s, what is life at that point? And I got into an accident. I scraped up the side of my face, and that was the end of that marvelous career. And I had to sit there and figure out what to do. Now, to
Yeah.
kind of place the setting here, there was this really cool new invention that just came out, right? You might have heard of it. It was called an iPhone, right? And there was
Did
this
you
really
pronounce that right? I'm not
right,
super
right.
familiar.
And there was this really cool game. The game was called Angry Birds, right? And I was thinking, these guys are making all kinds of cash. I mean, how hard could it be to make, a video game on a phone? How hard could that
Yeah.
be, right? So I didn't have any money. I went to Barnes and Noble, and I stole a book called what was it? Java 6.
Okay.
Introduction to Java, because I just Google searched like what is the best programming language. That's what you do at that time, right?
Mm.
And it brought me to Java. I tried to go through the book, failed, and turns out I was like learning the wrong thing. Like at the time, it was like, oh no, to build an iPhone game, you got to learn Objective C.
Mm.
Did that, failed. Swift wasn't a thing back then, and the third try, I'd realized that, and this is kind of the theme maybe for today, that through my failures, I wasn't starting from zero. I was constantly building upon the knowledge of what I had already, come across.
Mm.
So then on that third language, I was like, there's Java. There's this thing, it has to be close, right? It's called JavaScript. And you use that to make websites. Obviously, they're the same thing. Um, and I fell in love with it, right? I love the fast iteration of building for the web. I was able to just click a button, understand what was going on, HTML, CSS. Fast forward a year of putting family and friends to the side, those that aren't willing to stick with me on that ride. And I got my very first job as a digital storyteller, making 32 grand at my local newspaper agency.
Okay. Okay. How was that role? Talk to us about what that, because what is a digital storyteller for
Yeah.
starters?
Oh man. Oh man. I was so hacky at it. Right. So the news industry is actually pretty crazy because if it's you spend so much time to get it out there today, and then it's history tomorrow, right? You're
Mm,
constantly just like putting your best effort
mhm.
only to have it thrown away in when the next big scoop comes.
Yeah.
So I got really, really good at prototyping, right? I'm a DA. I got really good at prototyping, really good about, telling that story and making an impact because I'm working alongside journalists. And I cheated completely because the newspaper industry uses this crappy CRM.
Mm.
And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I, went behind the scenes. I saw that I could put in an iframe and I would
Mm.
build out like my own custom site on Heroku and then use the iframe and inject that onto the news page. So it's probably like the least secure thing that I could have done. But like, they kept asking me, like, Michael, how are you like doing all this fancy stuff? Like, I didn't know our system supported that. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't. I'm completely cheating.
You
But
look
yeah,
a
so
wizard though. You looked like a wizard.
oh man, I was the man. They was like, man, I'm so glad I hired this guy. And the reason why I left was because I realized the value that I was bringing was contradictory to the pay that I was earning. So as I
Mm.
mentioned, I was making 32 grand a year as a full stack developer, JavaScript on the front end, Node.js on the back end, right? Deploying to Heroku, doing all this stuff. After the first year, I'm a self-taught developer, right?
Yeah.
Dropped out of college, no certifications. I went to them and I said, I got my year in. That's all I need as a
Yeah.
self-taught developer, right? And I said, I want double. And they looked at me like, we're not going to pay you double, Michael. We're not going to pay you double. I was like, cool, I'm out. And I started consulting. I was consulting for 3 years and I was making double. And from there, I was like, okay, this tech thing, it's going to work out. But, there were a lot of people that were left along the way.
Mm.
And I was happy for those that stayed with me. And I think to this day, the person that has stayed with me throughout that entire journey was my wife. She
Oh,
was with
that's
me when I
awesome.
was a server making server money with roaches crawling on the wall. That's one of our favorite stories. Is she was with me when she would come over, bring me Applebee's, and we would just pretend like the roaches weren't there. And
Oh, wow.
and then she's been with me throughout this entire time. She's an amazing woman.
That's awesome. What an inspiring story. I want to kind of bounce around here in the timeline just because you brought
Yeah,
up a couple really good points there and I wanted to touch on them. So started as a male model,
yeah,
had all the side gigs. Like I worked in entertainment, so I understand the side hustles in
yep.
between, what were some things that you kept with you as far as like lessons or just
Yeah.
foundations to how you lived or worked
Hmm.
that you've seen in the other jobs you've taken?
Yeah. So it's thick skin. That's the main
Mm,
thing. I do get asked that question quite often. It's like, what qualities did you retain from being a male
yeah.
model? It's thick skin. People think it's being in front of the camera. Honestly, that never goes away, and you get it with practice.
Mhm.
But in the modeling industry, you're no different than a piece of furniture, right? They're
Mm,
dressing. They're not selling you. They're selling the clothes that you are wearing. Your job is to just make them look good. uh, and realizing that and having to deal with that, hey, your skin looks flawed like this, turn your head this way. You could stand to gain a couple pounds of muscle or lose a couple pounds of fat. You have to get over that really, really quickly.
mm,
Otherwise, you're just not going to make it. You're constantly being assessed. And if you can understand that that's the industry you're in and remove that from the person that you are, then you'll do well.
love
If you
that.
can't, then you have to you're kicking rocks, right? The industry is
Yeah.
not for you.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like so many industries are like that. So how
Yeah.
how do you suggest people, I guess, work on that? tech's hard. Tech's super hard. You went
Yeah.
from one competitive industry to another one. So what were some things that you had to do to get yourself there
I wish I
besides
had
the
a
thick skin?
no. You're absolutely right. I wish I had a secret formula, but I think at that point you have that's whether that's the make or break of whether you have it or not. This industry isn't for everybody. Modeling isn't for everybody, right? Tech isn't for everybody. And then when it comes to content creation, that's sort of the bridge of those two. But at the same time, you have to be in tune with who you are as a person. Not everybody is male model quality, but you have personality,
Yeah.
right? You have a voice, you have dynamic range, and you can bring those to the table. Understanding what those attributes are is probably the closest you can get to being self-aware of if you're going to make it or not. I am I'm the second oldest of 12 in my 12
Wow.
siblings in my family, right? So I'm heavily accustomed to being made fun of for various reasons, because that's what you do with your siblings, right? You just make
Yeah.
fun of each
Yeah.
other all the time. Oh, Mikey, you got a big forehead. Is it? Yeah, fine, yeah. Those things don't bother me anymore. That just becomes ha ha, laugh it off. Uh, but at the end of the day, you have to be understanding of whether what that limit is, whether or not
Sure.
you're going to be accepting of that.
So this started early on then, as far as like that self-awareness. What was that like growing up in a family of 14 then, right? With your parents, obviously, and then the
Yeah,
siblings.
it's it's tough because and this is actually the part of the story that not a lot of people know. Um, so I have 12 siblings, and that's spanning step brothers and sisters and half brothers
Mm-hmm.
and sisters, things like that, right? A lot of people know that I come from humble beginnings. Um, my mother, she gave up custody of my brother and I when we were younger over to my dad. Cool. We were in Chicago, moved to Iowa. That's what brings me here now.
Mm-hmm.
And then my sisters at the time, it was just the four of us. My sisters at the time stayed with my mom. Fast forward a lot of time and a lot of incidents.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my mother passed away due to drug
Mm-hmm.
abuse. And as I was much older, I think I was just entering college at that point, and I'm in the hospital with my mom, and there's not much time left, right?
Yeah.
So I'm holding her hand, and she looks me, she's my Spanish side, she looks me right in the eye as best she could. She goes, Mijo, I'm so proud of who you are. And I'm just looking at her, right? I'm letting her pick the words and the moments that she wants to bring us into.
Yeah.
And she goes, I'm so proud of who you are. She said, the best thing, and I'll never forget this, the best thing that I ever did for you was give you to your dad, because he raised you to be the man that you are today.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's words like that, they'll last with you
Yeah.
forever, right?
Yeah.
So I shared that story with my dad, and the tears are coming down, and we're
Yeah.
having a moment.
Yeah.
But I'm very fortunate that, and the difference is stark, but I'm very fortunate that I was able to be raised by a man, and be taken away from that lifestyle that she chose to go down, because some of my siblings didn't make it that way, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a whole element to that stuff
Sure.
that kind of, it puts the weight on my shoulders. Like, you can't fail, right? You're
Yeah.
gonna have setbacks, but you can't fail, because you have a whole generation of people that are looking up to you, because you were given, through luck, through chance, through God, through whatever it is, every opportunity to make it out where some of us didn't get to.
Wow. You reflect on that moment a lot?
I would say, if I'm being honest, I would say maybe every other day, right? I could say there's a day where I maybe don't think about it, caught up in
Sure.
the moment, but every other day I think about that.
But subconsciously it probably is driving you, even
It's
on the days you don't directly think about it.
I always say, folks like me aren't supposed to be here, right? The system isn't set up for folks like me and my backgrounds and my beginnings to make it to this level. And the fact that I've made it here, I think that says something. So yeah, there's plenty to reflect on, and there's plenty to give back to. I've
Yeah.
had tons of help, tons of mentors and peers along the way that just didn't give up on me. They've come and gone,
Mhm.
but the fact is, it's not a just me journey. It
Sure.
it takes some people to bring you up and some people
Yeah.
to lift you up to make that happen.
Wow. That's crazy. That's such a like inspiring story, and you should be proud of yourself. I'm sure everybody around you is proud of everything you've done too. Um, I guess kind of just in the vein of family and then balancing work, like it took a lot of effort and time to get where you were and are now. Like, how do you balance, especially having a family of your own and that work part?
Yeah, I like to think that if I wasn't in tech, right, if you just take all the coding knowledge out of my head, I would be a carpenter.
Mm,
And in my house, I'm the cook, I'm the chef. And as I said, proud husband, father of three. Uh, the central theme here, because I think about that, what is it that I'm actually doing on this planet? I'm a builder. I'm a nurturer.
mm,
So at the end of the day, you can take away all the tech, but that mindset is heavily instilled in me, either because of now maybe past life experiences, not having that growing up, or the fact that my dad was able to give that to me. But I am someone who builds, so that is the bridge between family life and tech. I'm building at the end of the day. I'm building
wow.
content. I'm building technical members up, and then I'm also building up and watering my own grass.
Wow. I love that. What was, as far as like the journey through modeling, what was building there for you? Or was that something that kind of came as an epiphany to you later that that was your you?
Modeling,
Yeah. No,
I would.
the building aspects, like was there something there for you that you were building or creating outside of just like the physical medium that you were getting something out of?
I wish I had something prophetic. The modeling
Yeah.
stage was I was walking in the mall one day and somebody said, hey, you should be a male model. And at the time, maybe certain concepts weren't as widely accepted as they are
Yeah.
today. So, I brushed it off. I'm
Yeah.
not going to be a guy in underwear taking photos. And but no, that ended up being, just pure experience,
Sure. Okay.
and having to learn lessons along the way,
Yeah.
that brought me into that.
I love that. I mean, we grow through some of those experiences and then find out what we are. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you need that path. What what was something what was something as far as that first job that really made you self-aware that like you wanted to go to the next step? Like some people would have just been great there, but like what was
Honestly,
pushing you to grow and keep going?
it's it goes back to how far can I stretch this ceiling, right?
Mm,
Something just weird quotes. I mean, I don't know if my ADHD like kicks in or what, but like certain quotes would just stick with me. And one of them was from Chris Rock, and I think a lot of us know the comedian Chris Rock, right? And he said, when you're white, the sky's the limit, right? And I was like, okay, okay, I understand that. And then his follow up was, but when you're black, the limit's the sky. And it took me
wow.
a long time to be like, what is he talking about there? Right. And it's purely a mind shift. And if you could shift your mind to say that certain folks have it all the way up here and certain folks only have it all the way up here and no further, if you can say, I don't want to be a part of that chapter, I'm going to write my own book,
Hmm.
then you can really open up doors for yourself. So I went from working at the local newspaper. I said, that's not good enough for me. I want more. So then I went to consulting. I want more. I worked at John Deere. John Deere is the farming company
Hmm.
out here in the Midwest, and a lot of folks in our area retire from here. They
Yeah.
stop. That's good. You get
Hmm.
pensions, you get the six-figure salary. That's good.
Hmm.
I wanted more. So then I started working at AWS. I was there for 4 years, and I reached a point where the work started to feel like work. I felt like I had completely transformed how I do business, how I market myself, and things like that. And so I wanted more. And now I'm working at Orcus, a Series A startup, and I'm able to have a much bigger impact and leave my fingerprint on the company itself.
I love that. So let's talk about your time at AWS a little bit because I feel like for
Yeah,
a lot of people, like that is it.
that
That
is
is that.
it.
That is one of the big ones.
Yeah.
So what was that process like getting in there, and then maybe talk? We'll fast forward to
Hmm.
the end where you knew like, okay, I've hit my ceiling here.
Yeah. Yeah. The process was tough.
Yeah.
Um, as I mentioned, I was making six figures, first time making six figures, and for context, because that's 100 to 900,
Yeah.
it was $104,000, like
Hmm.
just enough to say I'm
Yeah.
making it.
Yeah.
Um, I as I was getting into that realm at John Deere, I left because enterprise isn't my thing. Natter Dabbit, shout out to Natter. A lot of folks know him.
Yeah.
He was working at AWS at the time. He was like, "Hey, you should come join me." I went through the interview process as a solutions architect. I've always been very
Mm.
technical. Went through, got through the initial screening, went through the whiteboarding aspect of their interview process, bombed it, failed it.
Mm.
Never made it past that, completely destroyed. What am I doing? At this point, I thought I was going to get it. Something folks should never do is leave the company that they're at and then and then try to apply
Oh,
places, right? So I
yeah,
left my
yeah.
6-figure job and now I'm trying. And that was probably like one of the most heartfelt experiences between my wife and I, because we were going through savings. And I sat there and I said, "Babe, I need you to trust me on this. I know I can get it. Okay. I'm thinking it's going to take 2 months." So she said, "Okay." We went ahead. We had savings in place.
Mhm.
I'm horrible at saving money. Okay. Let me just
Guilty.
like pause the conversation real quick. Okay. There's such a thing, maybe worthy of another conversation, of making money too fast.
Mm.
And I definitely did that. No financial
Yeah.
advisor, didn't grow up with money. So I didn't know how to save it. I knew how to
Yeah.
spend it.
Sure. Been there.
The crab boils were coming in, right? Right. I knew how to spend it, but I didn't know how to save it.
Yeah.
So we had two savings, 2 months worth of savings to go through. I studied hard. What I didn't realize is that the interview process at AWS tends to be very long. So it took me a month for me to get back into the loop. Fortunately, I was able to. It took me another month to go through the interview process as a developer advocate. The only thing that changed was, because I still failed the whiteboarding aspect, but the only thing that
Mm.
changed was that I had to give a presentation
Mm.
to the developer advocacy team. Uh, Went through there, and apparently I did well. I made a brand for myself early on by making technical content online. Focus Otter had been established. Um, Spoiler alert, I only made the Focus Otter brand because an otter is the mascot for one of the services at AWS. And
Oh.
so when I say like I made a brand around it, I formed an LLC. Focus Otter is my established LLC today. And I was like, they're gonna know me. Went
Yeah.
through the interview process. It was cool. They didn't know Michael Liendo, but they knew Focus Otter. And I got down to the final day. That final day was on month 3. I only had 2 months worth of savings. I'd already
Wow.
asked in-laws. I already asked my uncle. I've already borrowed money from people that can give me the
Mhm.
money. Right. Um, Came down to it. They gave me the offer after the full day interview experience. Right. Gave me the offer, and you're supposed to counter offer. You're supposed to, right?
Yeah.
When I tell you, I said yes. Yes, I'll take it. I'll take it. Right. Um, AWS L6 role, right? I'm happy discussing salaries at all
Yeah. Yeah.
times.
No, awesome.
It was at what was it? Hold on. Base was 160 plus another 100K on top of that for
Wow.
over 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get your
Yeah.
vesting,
Yeah.
things like that. But I mean, we're making money now.
Yeah.
Now everybody's eating the crab boils. I'm still not saving the
Yeah.
shit. But no, that was good, and life was good. I'm happy that from there I made an impact over the next 4 years. um I got to travel the world. Opportunities and doors opened up for me, and for what it's worth, I'd like to think that I flourished while I was there.
Okay. That's awesome. I love that story. What was that reality check like? I think something that we don't talk about enough is like the finances.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about that a little bit. What was that reality check like for you when you had that 2 month runway?
I had to I had to realize that, sometimes it's okay to just walk on the sidewalk. And what I mean by that is, you know, we have sidewalks because the streets aren't for everybody,
Hmm.
right? And coming from humble beginnings, I need to have a real conversation with myself. It's like it's too easy to eat out 5 days a week because I can do it. I can do it. But now, as a 32-year-old at the time, man, married, 3 kids, what does that future look like? Am I maxing out my 401k? Is my excess going over into a Roth? And when you don't know those terms and you're just illiterate, you're financially illiterate because it wasn't passed down to you, you don't know what you don't know.
Mm.
And one of the greatest skills that I've had is just saying, I don't know. Right? It's always one of the greatest skills you can have. Can you help me? And I was asking my buddy, and I would consider him a mentor at AWS, Renee Brandel. What books do you read? How are you, this whole vesting thing with RSUs and stock, how does that work? And he said, look, man, I need you to read these 2 books. And it wasn't like the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It was like, I will teach you how to be rich. Shout out to that book, changed my life. And another one that I don't think I read, but that was the one.
The only one that mattered was the
I'm
other
being
one that you
very
read.
real
Yeah.
here. It's like, read 2 books. That's already asking a lot. Went through it. I asked the right questions internally. Can you help me make sense of this stuff? And then now from there, now we can be smart with our money. I thought for the longest time that if I put money in the 401k, like that's it.
Yeah.
And like, no, you have to actually like pick the investments. You have to, distribute them accordingly. My money was just sitting there doing nothing. But yeah, it was, Roxy, great book, great book. And just slowly but surely breaking down barriers along the way. I was 32 years old when I finally got my finances figured out, right? I'm passing that down to my children. My youngest son is 7 years old. Right? I was 30 years old when I took my first flight. My children have flown to Puerto Rico and across the entire United States at this point. Like they can navigate an airport. And I bring them on stage, I bring them on trips with me, not to show them, hey, look how cool dad is. But even though they think that I'm pretty cool, but also so they can see I can do this too. I can envision myself doing this. And again, I didn't have that. So as long as I can make the next generation smarter than me, I feel like I'm doing something all right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I guess just back, like one last kind of question about the finances part. A lot of people will come in and go through that exact same experience you had.
Mm-hmm.
How would you suggest people avoid that? Like, what's a lesson or some sort of a tool besides the books you recommended?
Yeah.
That maybe people should have in the front of their mind when they are taking on these changes and pretty drastic changes in their finances.
Yeah.
When they get a new tech role.
One thing you probably picked up in this conversation is that I intentionally and very explicitly talk about finances. I started the conversation talking about my bougie ass koi pond. I've given you real numbers about the salaries that I had along my journey. And it's all to set the stage that in the beginning, you won't be making that money. I've been in this game 12 years now, right? I'm very open with it. And I hope that it just kind of takes the taboo out of discussing finances. Otherwise, now we've created black boxes and silos where none of us can learn from one another.
I think that's super important. I wish more people would have conversations about this. Somebody should get a class together.
Yeah.
Like finances for new developers or new to tech.
I know a couple guys.
Really?
Folks, DM me after the call, but maybe we can put it in the show notes. But I know a couple guys that have reached out to me that I trust that can help you get set up to make sure that you're making wise financial investments.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I think there's so many conversations in tech that aren't had. The finances and, obviously you've been in the industry 12 years, so you've seen your rounds of layoffs.
Yeah.
Has that affected you? Have you had to deal with any of that?
When I joined AWS, as I mentioned, I had the content, I had the brand, and even though I wasn't accepted as a solutions architect, they were able to find a position for me very quickly.
Wow. Yeah.
And fast forward to when I left, I'm thinking, I've spoken at reInvent multiple years. I'm, statistically one of the best speakers in all of AWS. Yeah. When I put my name out there, hire him. 4 months went by with nobody hiring me. And I'm thinking, after the first month, okay, cool. That's because I was laying low. Second month, I started putting out feelers, let me apply here, let me apply there. By the third month, I'm like, am I gonna have to put that like green button on LinkedIn that's even open for hire? I don't want to do that.
No.
It's like I don't want to do that. Um, and so I really tapped into my resources on month 3, which led me to the interview process where I was hired in month 4, and that was scary
Yeah.
because and I just like shout out to anybody going through it right now and filling out all those applications. I'm fortunate where even throughout all of that, I could still be selective in the jobs that I wanted. But at the end of the day, some folks don't have that luxury, and it's tough. It's
Hmm.
tough on both ends of the spectrum. If you're a new developer and you're competing with a bunch of new developers, how do you manage that? If you're a seasoned developer and your salary expectations are up here, how do you navigate that, right?
Yeah.
It is very difficult, and my biggest advice with all that is tap into your network, right? Your network is
Mm.
your net worth. A lot of us know that. You have to make sure that you have friends out there looking out for you.
How do you, since you brought that up, and I love talking about networking and community. I mean, that's literally why I'm in the position I am. A lot of people can also
Yeah.
attest to that same trajectory. Like, how do you suggest people go about doing that? I think a lot of people have a little bit of hesitancy when it comes to just like asking for help.
Yeah, yeah, and get over it.
Mm.
I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
you got to get over it.
Yeah.
You have mouths to feed, and maybe you don't, but you have your own self to take care
Yeah.
of. You don't want to limit yourself because of your shyness, right? But okay, let's say you don't have the community. Let's say you don't have that network already built up. Right? I don't have 100,000 followers. I got my 6, and I'm happy with that. Um, what you can do is just start putting yourself out there in the form of content. These days, I have mixed feelings on the impact of content, but is undisputable is the fact that people will see you if you put content out there, right? Something is useful. Biggest problem that I had whenever I was in my developer advocacy, like heavy content moments,
Hmm.
is that I wanted to put out in what was in my mind 100%, like put out this project that is 100% done. And the downside to that, what took a mentor to help me out with was my 50% of whatever this project is could be 100% of what another person needs.
Mm.
So get it out there early. And slowly you start to build up the communication. Now you got a message thread. Hey, thanks. You solved my problem. Great. Now you have somebody in your network. Now the algorithm is going to keep matching you guys together. And if the day comes where you might find yourself in a position where you need a job, they could be the one.
No, that's great advice. I hope everybody wrote that down. If you didn't, it's recorded, thankfully. But you mentioned you've got kind of mixed feelings about content creation. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a recent development. Yeah.
Yeah.
Joining the new company, I have I would say part manager role. I'm saying, 20% of helping this Series A company get established,
Hmm.
right? I got to organize some things.
Sure.
Um, at AWS, content was king.
Mm.
And content goes two ways as a developer advocate. You put content out into the community, but then you also have to do the other part, which I think a lot of developer advocates fail at, which is taking those insights and turning that into content that you can bring internally so that your engineers and your project managers can understand and get
Yeah,
insights, right? That's the part of DevRel that a lot of folks that aren't in it might not understand.
that's interesting.
But where my position on it has changed is you can spend too much time creating content and not enough time trying to level up your other skills. A lot of DAs, we have soft skills, right? But what about upskilling in the sense that maybe one day you can manage a team of DAs, right? I'm always looking for the next thing. So as a single DA, you're still an individual contributor. You're still an
Mhm.
IC. How do I get it to the next level? Because studies show that 250K is the theoretical max that you can get it as an individual contributor. And I want to keep making more money. I'm all about
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
right? So how do you get to that? And it turns out it's not by creating more content. You get to that by force multiplying, by being someone who creates something that other people can use.
Mm.
And so I'm looking into that aspect. So not so much on just Michael Liendo focus art or creating content, but now I'm enabling others to do the same, and I'm creating workflows and playbooks to accompany that for them.
I love that. What is your what's your kind of your vision of your next couple of years where you are? Like, what sort of growth are you looking to scale? What you're doing? I mean, you kind of touched on it there, but like, you're always thinking a couple steps ahead, it seems like. So what are you thinking?
I've reached a point where it's time to start taking this knowledge that I've acquired and teaching others now. Now, I mean, I've always given back in the forms of blog posts and videos. But now, how do I raise a generation of Michael Liendos? And I don't mean that to be vain. It's just taking this knowledge that is, I would find, others to find it useful. How do I take that, give it to them so that they can level up and not have to go through 12 years of what I went through, right? If I can give you information and distill it into, congrats on your new job. Here are the top 20 things that I want you to focus on over the course of 3 years. I think that's useful.
Yeah.
I like that. Managing a team is definitely up there. But effectively being a leader. One of the greatest things that I've learned is at any new job or in any job, really, we're given an abundance of tasks. And one of the hardest things to realize is as we're juggling all of these balls, we have to figure out which one of those are made of glass, which one of those are made of rubber, and when we can let some of them fall. If you can figure that out, you're ahead of the curve.
I think that's interesting you brought that up, because something I've been focusing on a lot is like being okay with quitting things, or like understanding how to sort of niche down. You are an advocate of Bolt. I saw it on Focus Otter website. You use Bolt. There are so many tools out there right now. You went from V0 to Bolt, so you tried them both, as have I. How do you decide? Like, how do you decide what tools to use? Like, how do you get away from shiny object syndrome?
For me, it's I have a really hard time getting away from it. But at some point, you gotta say, this is what I'm gonna go deep on, right? Being T-shaped, going back to that, right? This is what I know, but this is what I know really well. And for reference, I like V0. I do like it. I just happen to be in a space where my background is heavily based off of AWS. The folks at Vercel, they're awesome, they're great, and I agree with their positioning here, but they won't hire me because it would mean me giving up Focus Otter, the Focus Otter brand, right? They don't want me creating AWS content because they're that nice DX wrapper around AWS. Understand it. And if I take that coupled with my brand and my audience wouldn't like it if I just showed off V0 and Next.js stuff. And then I look at where I'm at in the workplace. My company happens to be very agnostic of what front-end tool you use. So I have all these signals that are saying I can't be heavily opinionated on one specific thing. Bolt is great because it's based off of Vite, and I could use that to tie into any front-end framework. So it's a very strategic and realistic view of why I prefer Bolt these days.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I personally also love it. I loved your explanation as to why you use it as well. Just the simplicity to spin something up like that wireframe of a project and then get your parts put together. Just really optimizes workflows. How would you suggest, as far as like productivity, do you think that you manage your time well when you're working?
If we have to break that into two parts. If in my mind I am in focus mode, it's very hard to for me to step away from that. I'm going to go deep on something that's managed very well. I would say I'm not the smartest, but it's just very hard to outwork me. However, because the field that I'm in always has me being pulled in various directions, then it can be difficult to find out what I need to sink my teeth into versus what I need to just maybe get a nibble of and then just say, let's pass on that for later on. I struggle with that. And I'm very upfront with that with my managers, and that's part of that communication. What I like to call developing political capital internally. They have to know your strengths and they have to know your weaknesses. If you can get to a point where early on in your career, you're hungry, you're yearning, you're learning, and you need to say yes to everything. Yes, give me more, I'll do it. If you can get to the point where now you have to flip the switch and it's no to everything, because they need to understand that when you say yes, you're going to deliver, you're going to knock it out of the park. When you get to that point, now you can be prescriptive about what you dive deep on and what you can communicate to your managers in terms of what you'll get done.
Yeah, that's awesome. I also struggle with time boxing and time management. It's hard,
Yeah.
especially when you want to like build something and then you get distracted
Yep.
and you broke it and you got to fix it and you're like, oh, I was supposed to be doing something else anyways. Ah, shit.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's where the knowledge comes from,
Yeah.
right? You get those insights and you start creating content, or you're creating projects rather,
Hmm.
similar to how your end users will use them. Now you're ahead of the game. And that's what, again,
Yeah.
it's what makes a developer advocate into what I call a mid funnel developer advocate, because now you have technical insights into when you're off of the happy path.
I like that. And you refer to yourself as a mid-level, correct? I believe
Yeah.
that's how you had referenced it. What does that mean? And did you coin that? And what are the other levels?
I coined the term mid funnel developer
Mid-funnel. I'm
advocate.
sorry. Yeah, that's what I
No,
meant.
it's all good. And
Yeah.
for context, folks in the audience, what that means is that when customers come to your application or your product, you think of it like a funnel, right? That they have
Hmm.
to come down into. That entry point is going to be all of your hello world beginner level content, which is great for attracting new people. Your TikToks, your awesome Twitter posts and things like that. That's going to be top of funnel content. That's
Okay.
not me, and I make a point to let my employer know that. uh, I am mid funnel. I want to work with the companies or the customers that are already using our product. How do I make sure that they have a better experience? Right?
Mm.
Not one to one, but one to few. Right? I'm catering to that audience. They're very technical. They're well ingrained. They don't need hello world. They need certain use cases developed for them. That's where I like to be, because now I understand the product from a technical perspective, and I still retain all the customer enabling aspects, like communicating what it is and how do we make the product better for them specifically, because those are the people that bring in the money.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Roxy had a question here. When you started as a dev advocate, did your socials and personal content fall to the wayside? Question, comma, second part, because of burnout?
Good question, Roxanne. It's so good to have you in the chat. Um, no, they didn't. My socials increased and I'm making a key point here, just based off of your sentence. When I started developer advocacy, because that was a new field for me, right? I
Mm.
was an engineer at that point,
Yeah.
and then I'm going into it. I was coming in hungry. Like burnout wasn't something that I was going to let myself fall into, because I want to be in this field, right?
Mm.
I'm ambitious. I'm going after it. I'm putting forth 110% of my energy, and I'm like literally 110, like more energy than I should have been putting into it,
Yeah.
because I needed to make it. I was like, I'm doubling down here. As you heard, I'm running off of savings. My wife is dependent
Hmm.
on me. I have to make it work. And when my back is against the corner, and I think for a lot of you, when your back is against the corner and you have to make it work, then burnout's not a concept that you're willing to accept in your mind.
Yeah, that's interesting. Have you had those points where you felt like you were experiencing burnout?
Yeah, yeah. It's usually it's in the middle, right? The honeymoon stage is over. You made it, um, and then now you don't know how to turn it off. That was the hardest thing for me
Mm.
when I first got my job into tech. When I first got my job as a DA, I had built up this persona, and to this day, I don't know if it's healthy or not, but I built up this persona of who I am and what I'm trying to do. The hardest thing is that when you make it, what do you do? Right? You've accomplished what you set out to
Yeah.
do. And now you have this whole embodiment of a person that doesn't need to exist anymore. I don't need to be that hungry, but I can't turn it off. Right? I don't need to spend time away from the wife and the kids, but I don't know how to do anything different. It's like method acting, but now
Yeah.
you're stuck as being that actor.
Oh wow. So what's the switch for you? When did you kind of like have that light bulb moment?
It is, and this is the unhealthy part. It is arguments, right?
Mm.
It's understanding that your work isn't getting done. It's your personal life is gone. It's a complete realization that you tried so hard to get to where you want to be, and you look around and nobody's there anymore because you pushed them all away. It is not a good place to be. You made it, but now you have to build up those relationships all over again. So there are times when I have to work really, really hard, but now they're always precluded by a conversation with my manager. Hey, after this, I can push this through. I can get this done. It's going to take extra time.
Mm.
I'm going to need to take time off after this. Right. With my wife, hey, babe, I really have to get this done. It's going to be for this amount of time. This is just how serious we do it now. It's going to be for this amount of time. During that time, you can't expect me to be coming to bed. Can't expect me watching our shows. But afterwards, I promise we're going to get back to normal.
Yeah.
And unless you have those real conversations, you're guaranteed to miss the bigger picture, which is what are we working for?
How did you develop these strong communication skills? These aren't easy conversations to have.
No, they're not. Growing up, I grew up in a household where, like, I think maybe some of us can maybe raise our hands to this, right? 90s, 2000s. There was a different disciplinary structure. I didn't have a
Yep.
mom in the picture to coddle me and maybe let dad know, hey, you might be going a little bit too far, right? But I grew up in a structure where I wasn't allowed to say no.
Mhm.
And so you had to become very methodical. As the oldest sibling, you had to become very methodical in how you learn to disagree with somebody. And for me, it was my father. Father was alpha male. And I had to get very, creative with, this is how I'm going to talk to you so that I can get to my way. And as I became a teenager, it became a whole another dynamic of, we're playing mental chess with each other at that point. But you learn, for what it's worth, all the experiences aside, you do learn how to garner a certain sense of conversing when it comes to, especially times when you're on the opposite side of an opinion with someone else.
Communication just across the board, personal, professional, so important. What kind of shows do you and your wife watch?
We Squid Game just started. We haven't gotten down to it yet, but White Lotus is one. But honestly, lately we've been reading next to each other. And we'll just sit on our couch at night, and she'll be on her Kindle. I'll usually have the Audible book going at 1.5x, but we'll sit there and we'll read. Currently, we're reading Red Rising. It's a little bit like Silo. It's a little bit like Dune, but then we'll read it. We come about it at the same time towards the ending, and then we'll discuss it. At our house, at our dinner table, we all eat dinner at the same time. It was a big deal for me because we didn't do that growing up. And they know at every single meal I'm going to ask you, who has facts for me today? What are the facts? And random history things, but from 7, 12, and 14, they know they need to be having facts for me.
Those are your kids' ages? 7, 12, and 14? I have 16, 14, and 8. So we're like right there. We're like right there, man.
Oh, man, you're driving now, though.
Not yet. She's afraid to drive, which is great.
That's actually awesome. That is great.
Totally fine. I was like, that's totally fine. We do peek and pit at our table, and we all sit together, start with a peek and a pit every day that they're here.
So, I'm not peek and pit. What does that mean?
Like the highlight of the day and the low
peek
light
and pit.
Day.
I'm with you.
Oh yeah. So that's awesome that you do that. How important is it for you to have those types of connections when you work so hard?
Yeah, it goes back to, well, I tell my kids that they have a skewed perception compared to their other friends of what it means for me to be in the picture. It's like I tell them, it's like, most dads are gone until 5 o'clock. Like, you guys realize that, right? Like they don't know me as anyone else than someone who is home all the time.
Yeah.
And I sometimes I just have to like reality check them, like, hey, like, remember this, I'm doing what hopefully could be the norm, but is not the norm compared to your friends. But I've learned to cherish every moment of it. Right. This is just, it's bonus time that I get with them. The fact that we're in the same house. Now, if anything, I'm balancing them being spoiled because these kids don't know how to, on a 90-degree day, drink out of the hose. It has to come from the fridge. But it's give and take. I can't say that I've learned it. I can say that I'm learning it every day. I know core principles, right? I know that we need to be a family. I know that it's okay for me to set boundaries. Hey, dad is working right now. You got to give me space. And I know that, honestly, my youngest, he should probably sign an NDA because he still interrupts a lot of my meetings and hears all of the inside conversation.
Yeah.
It's give and take.
I hear Jack knows all my coworkers. Usually, I'm surprised he hasn't come in yet. He'll just you just see his head, and then he leaves. That's awesome. I love that you're in a position where that's like, okay, I think sometimes people are sort of afraid to blur that line between personal and professional. But for me, it's like this is who I am. Like
Yeah,
I work at home. My home is here. You're in my home, so it's like why wouldn't they be here?
I
So
call it my coworkers know it as the he lives here too rule. Right. And it's like if he pops his head on the screen like Jack
yeah,
does, he lives here too. So
yeah,
I mean, I don't know what to tell you here.
yeah.
No, I'm not gonna go on mute. I'm just gonna quietly for a second tell him I'm in a meeting and that we can continue back on with the conversation.
Oh yeah.
Uh, but it takes a leader to be able to establish that as an acceptable piece of culture.
Mm,
Right. So if you don't have folks that are willing to do that, then you'll never break that cycle. And I'm all for me being me. If you get into a meeting, I'm gonna wear my little chain, right? I'm gonna come on here. I'm not gonna do the enterprise talk. I'm not gonna have you guess what I'm saying in between the lines. Like I need to talk to you real so that we can have a better platform of communication. That's just who
mm.
I am.
No, I love that. How important is being authentic to you as a person, like being yourself? Because I feel like at this point, that's also how I try to like carry myself. But
Yeah.
I think some people kind of struggle with that. So how is it important to you, and how do you maintain it?
Yeah. I think it's earlier on in my career, it was tough because being in a room full of decision makers,
Mhm.
in which case, in my setting, in being here in the Midwest, it's just a lot of white people,
Yeah.
right? Being in those situations, they're expecting you to come to their level, right? You need to make sure that you are coping to how we do business over here. So I was at John Deere, and one of the things that I changed was every time that they had a meeting, they would call it, they would get together and they say, "We're having a clan meeting," and I'm like, nobody's gonna second guess this, really, really, and it's just they just
Wow.
call it we're gonna get together as a clan, and I'm just like, guys, like one the you can't do it aside, right? You can't do it aside. It's the fact that no one felt comfortable to speak up about it. That's what got me. You know, people are
What?
always going to establish what they want to establish. That's the beauty of this country.
Yeah.
I get that part. But the fact that you created an environment, that's the bigger problem. You created an environment where no
Yeah.
one felt comfortable speaking up about it. That's what I have issue with.
Mm.
So
Oh my
that's
God. This
that's
was
no
the
longer a
two
thing.
thou- this was the 2000s, by the way,
This
correct?
was if you want to get specific with it, this was a couple of weeks after George Floyd.
Oh
Like
my
that. That's
God.
the time period that we're talking about. Um, yeah, yeah. So
Jeez.
tough stuff. But if nobody is going to speak up at risk of their job or anything else, that says more about the company culture than somebody who says, "Hey, we should call these things clans or whatever." Um,
Ugh,
yeah,
that
yeah.
I literally just I'm sweating. That just made me so uncomfortable to hear. Oh my
Out of everything we've talked about, that's
I remember
that's the one.
that was the I'm like, what? So fun fact,
Yeah.
I was a process engineer at a company that was making cedar belts for a John Deere machine. We're one of their
Okay.
contractors. So I worked with with
Yeah.
a John Deere company. And I'm like, oh, I never knew that. And that I'm like, oh my God, that just made me so uncomfortable. That was
Well,
crazy.
now you know the guy who changed it company wide. Like
It's
that was
look at that.
yeah,
See,
yeah.
you're shaping history and cultures, and I think that's super important. But it's how like when did this self awareness like what were some moments in time where you kind of like taught yourself to be self aware? I don't think everybody is just that way.
No, no, it wasn't. And I'll just be very honest with you. I've always been introspective of
Mm,
myself. Uh but to go back to that when did it happen moment, it's it's not a happy story. I'll start
mm,
with that. It's the fact that I grew up and my mother got into drugs, and I'm just thinking, you chose that over me, and she gave up custody. And then I lived with my dad, and my dad was let's just call it what it is. I'm a grown man now. It's abusive. But you grow up in that lifestyle. The thing is, I was 18 years old, and I found out that he wasn't my biological father. I took a DNA test,
uh,
um, and he had that conversation with me. And I respected him more because for 18 years, he took a kid that wasn't his and raised him into this man through the means that he knew of.
Sure.
Right. Um, but you grow with that. But as I mentioned, I took that DNA test and it showed me who my biological father was. I'm 18 years old at this point. I thought I was, I was a man at that point. I knew what the world was at 18. Uh, so I reached out to him, my biological father, and it was from that moment that he, who I call now the man who raised me, didn't want anything to do with me. He felt like I had betrayed him after all those years. And so you have a child that grows up that is given away from one parent to finally be 18, and then he's given away from a second parent, and now you develop this complex of, why doesn't anybody want me? And you really got to look inward to realize two things. One, there's nothing wrong with me, right? But then the other aspect is it never really matters. It matters what I think of me, and I just have to reflect on myself and my mistakes, so that I can just continue to be the best version of who I am. And when I become that best version, great. Now let's do better and become the next best version. So I've always been looking forward, but it's not because of the positive. I can just maybe reflect on the negative a little bit better than some other folks.
Wow. I mean, self-awareness in those dark times can bring positive and light out of them.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's how you've sort of approached it. And I think that's again, super inspiring. Do you look at these moments, like how does that shape how you carry yourself every day in your life now as a parent?
Yeah, there's a certain expectation that I have to carry myself with, right? I have my own set of failures, but the expectation is that trends upward, right? I consistently do better. Folks that know the play Hamilton, right? They talk about a legacy. They say a legacy is planting seeds in a garden that you never get to see, right? And that's always stuck with me, because I am just doing my best in the time that I'm here to make sure that they don't have to go through what I went through, right? To make sure that when they grow up and I've
Yeah.
watched that plant, that I can take my eyes off it and it can still
Yeah.
continue to flourish.
Dang. Yeah, I love that. I said something very similar to my wife the other day about like what I want for my kids. It's like I don't want them to make the same mistakes I did. I don't want them to be me. I want them to always be that better version
Yeah.
of what I was. Which I guess leads us to our last question. We're hitting the hour here. That was like I didn't even realize. I just looked at my holy shit. I got like 2 minutes left. What does success look like to you, Michael?
Yeah. It's not about me. I can start with that. And if I'm being honest, it's not about my kids. Uh, Success is building a future where my kids' kids succeed. That's exclusively where my mind is at. I love my wife. We're going to live a long and happy life together. I love my children. They're going to grow up to be great. But I want to be able to say, as a parent, I then taught parents how to be parents to their kids, right? I'm looking at my kids as kids. Not even, and I'm specifically saying that, not my grandchildren, right? Because that puts me in the picture. I want to make sure that I'm passing lessons down to my children so that their children come out great. That lets me know that I've done my job as a parent. That's success.
Not only because you're insanely handsome, I would dab you up and like hug you right now. That was like so inspiring. I feel like as a parent who's in tech, hearing those types of things, and I know we have a ton of them in the chat that have been chiming in this whole time. It's great to hear those types of things. Again, we hit the hour. Where do you have any sort of shameless plugs or anything you want to talk about that you've got coming up, or where can people see you?
Yeah, I got a couple talks. I'm going to be in Seattle, actually, if anybody wants to get together in about 2 weeks. So if any of you are in that area, feel free to connect with me. I'm on Twitter. That's actually the best place to get a hold of me. If you message me on LinkedIn, I will see it. I will just see it and then tell myself I'm going to respond to you later and completely forget about it.
That's LinkedIn as a whole, as a platform. I'm so guilty of that. So guilty of that.
But aside from that, focusrider.com, feel free to drop me an email, subscribe to the YouTube. I haven't put out content, but that's because of the company shift. So taking a break from there while I establish myself at the new place. But yeah, you can find me on all socials at focusrider.com. And it's just been great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. Thanks for spending a little time with us. We finally connected
Yeah,
virtually. Are you going to commit your code in September? Did I
I
see
am
that?
not. I will likely be at DevRelCon, and then I will be. That's in New York, the end of July, and then I will be
Okay.
back in Seattle for Cascadia JS in
Uh,
August, and
yeah.
then for those of you listening that might know about a small conference in Mississippi called Magnolia JS that could be getting a
Yes.
reboot this year, and I don't want to speak on that too much, but you might see somebody there.
They were talking about that at Render this year. They were there,
Yeah,
and I
Kayla's
did.
great. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, I did hear they're coming back, so I might have to make an appearance myself. Well, hopefully, we'll run into each other IRL. Uh,
definitely.
this has been fantastic for anybody that isn't a commoner here or somebody that's normally here. You can hit Torque.community to see all of our events coming up for the rest of the week. We'll be back with a bunch of different streams. You can always hit us in the Discord, also at the Torque.community page. But outside of that, that is it. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And remember, it is nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. Wow.